This is the Freedom Talk Radio 2013 network, and you are listening to Surrounded by Idiots.
In your face, all over the place. We're online 24/7. 24/7. You're listening to the hottest internet station.
From beautiful Saline in southeastern Michigan.
Around the world at sunskymysteries.com.
This is the 2009 Top 10 Webcam in the World winner. This is SETV.
We are poor little lambs who have lost our way.
This message is transmitted at the request of the United States Office of Civil Defense at 3:40 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. NORAD detected a long-range nuclear missile launch in North Korea.
This government doesn't want things in the public. It's not a government, a transparent government.
You're moving into a land of both shadow and substance, of things and ideas. You've just crossed over into the Twilight Zone.
Totalitarianism doesn't need armies. It only needs to control a couple of things: the media and the ability to dispense privilege to some and withhold it from others. And of course, a weak and divided people helps.
What do you say to those who think that shouldn't concern them?
Problem is, that if they think they're not doing anything that's wrong, they don't get to define that. The central government does. The central government defines what is right and wrong and whether or not they target you. So it's not up to the individual, even if they think they're doing something wrong. If their position on something is against what the administration has, then they could easily become a target.
There is only one holistic system of systems. One vast and immane, interwoven, interactive, multivariate, multinational dominion of dollars. Petrodollars, electrodollars, multi-dollars, Reichsmarks, rims, rubles, pounds, and shekels. It is the international system of currency which determines the totality of life on this planet.
Another articulate spokesman defines liberalism as meeting the material needs of the masses through the full power of centralized government. Well, I, for one, resent it when a representative of the people refers to you and me, the free men and women of this country, as the masses. This is a term we haven't applied to ourselves in America. But beyond that, the full power of centralized government, this was the very thing the Founding Fathers sought to minimize. They knew that governments don't control things. A government can't control the economy without controlling people. And they know when a government sets out to do that, it must use force and coercion to achieve its purpose.
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is our Wednesday night show. And you are listening to Surrounded by Idiots. And those of you that are watching on the video stream at USSAMichigan.com, that's USSAMichigan.com, you're seeing some our clever video side of the show. I am currently doing a little bit of messing around with the various computers and servers and everything, so you don't really see the screen sharing right now. I have been setting the audio levels on everything. We also have the Shoutcast stream going. And sadly, our guest is not here with us. And that is because he is actually coming to us from the future. That's right, he's coming to us from the future. This is what I have been advertising for the past couple of weeks, that tonight's guest, one James Connelly, who has written a most excellent book, is coming to us from the future. He is not here with us right now in this time, and we are attempting to get a hold of him. And what I'm going to do in just a couple of minutes to give him some time to get to the telephone that he needs to use to talk to us in this time is I'm just going to have some clever bantering. This is what you call stretching in the radio business. That's why we had the Reagan clip, the introduction to the show, and the show credits. Normally I don't do that, but on this particular occasion, I decided to do that. So we're going to give him a few more minutes to get himself squared away. And in the meantime, I will show you the show notes. And you can actually see the software that I use to broadcast the show on the Shoutcast. So every once in a while, I will have to switch over to a different screen to see if our guest has called. In fact, I have that going on a separate computer, actually. Let me do this, and go over here and click connect on that computer. And hopefully this will connect properly. I am waiting for a network to connect here. Click connect. You might need to add additional information. Is an access point. Your wireless is currently configured to not connect to. How do you like that? I got a broken computer here that I'm using to attempt to do the work on the show. So while I am attempting to figure that out, I will do some talking here and tell you that we are in fact, let me see here, this particular show, we are going to be talking about liberals. That would be our liberal friends in Washington or wherever they happen to be. The book that our guest has written, let me bring that up here so that you can see it. And that software is starting right there. There we go. And I'm going to click that and open that. Click that there. And we will wait for that to open there. And there we go. It is called Modern Liberals. The Modern Liberal Jungle, A Guide for Americans by James B. Connelly, our guest on the show tonight. And I am going to switch back over to the network logo and see if he has come online yet. He has not. I am going to try to dial him again, and I will be back in just a minute. Some of you on on Blog Talk will hear some music, and we'll see if we can get him on the air. Is this Jim?
Yes.
This is Bill Zam. How are you?
Oh, hi, Bill.
Are you ready to go on the air?
Yes, and it is a conference call, I see, and Magic Jack, the system I use, gave me a little bit of a hard time here. They said I have to, and I don't mind, some kind of prepay to go on a conference call. Is that correct? Is it a conference call?
No, it's actually from the blogtalkradio.com studio. It's our studio guest line.
Regular line.
Yeah.
Yeah, it should be just a regular line.
Yeah. And you know what? Let me call you back from my Skype phone, and we can connect that way.
Okay.
And that way I can adjust the volume a little bit better on your call because you're a little bit soft.
Okay.
So,
sorry about this confusion.
No, that's okay. Let me call you back in about 30 seconds, okay?
Thank you.
Yep. And here we go. Okay. That went swimmingly well. And we're going to go over here and let me see what you are seeing. Yep, you are not seeing what I don't want you to see. And there we go. We are going to go here, and I'm going to go over here. This is live radio, folks. Congratulations. Here we go. And we are calling. Your current call will be put on hold. Okay, we're going to add to the group call. And there we go. You are back.
Sounds good.
Okay, excellent. Let me adjust your volume. Oh, there we go. You sound much better now.
Okay.
Oh, excellent. That is excellent. Okay.
Shall I keep talking while you adjust it?
Nope, we're all set. I am attempting to get a copy of your book up on the screen. And Blog Talk Radio is playing some music. While I'm doing that, hold on one second. I have had a rather difficult afternoon.
Oh, and how are you feeling?
I am feeling not too bad, actually.
Good.
There we go. And the Modern Liberal Jungle is now up, and we are going to go on the air. And stop that, and there we go. And I am back, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry for the snafu. There was a little bit of dead air there, but no worries. We professionals in the radio business know that dead air builds anticipation rather than losing listeners. So I am back. I am with our guest, and as I told you earlier in the show, our guest is in fact from the future. He is not in our present time. He is kindly joining us from where he is, and I'm doing that to prove a point, to speak much like liberals do, even though he definitely is not here in Wednesday. He is, in fact, on the other side of the international date line, and it is Thursday where he is in Japan. So that is exactly how liberals operate, because they don't tell you the whole truth. They tell you little bits and pieces of the truth and leave you to figure it out, and then when you figure out their lie, they tell you, well, you just didn't understand what I said. And that is how they operate. My guest tonight is one Mr. Jim Connelly. James B. Connelly, for those of you that want to look up his book on the internet, The Modern Liberal Jungle, A Guide for Americans. Good evening, Jim. How are you?
Oh, good morning over here in Japan. And since it's tomorrow, may I say Thanksgiving? Happy Thanksgiving to you?
Oh, thank you very much. Happy Thanksgiving to you as well. You're an American living in Japan. Do you observe the holiday over there?
Not really. Some people do individually, but not as a general custom.
Okay. My listeners would not forgive me if I did not ask you this question right off the bat. What is the reaction, and what are people doing in Japan about the radiation from Fukushima?
I think generally the Japanese are very accepting people, and they are not really getting very excited about it. They're dealing with it just on a daily basis. And what I've noticed a difference, especially in the liberal press, is they assume that people are making issues out of things that they're dealing with on a normal daily basis.
In your opinion, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it's a good thing, especially for society, because it's a more accepting of human nature, rather than we have to change and fix and make everything perfect the way we see the liberals today trying to do it, and in the past trying to do it.
That's very interesting. It's
in fact, I went to the university here in Japan, and I think that it partially formed some of my conservative views, that it seemed like in the United States people were trying to overthrow the government at the time. It was in the 1960s and 70s, and the new left was getting very extreme, while things were very calm, and acceptance of tradition and the need for people to have a stable society and to proceed slowly with changes that are always going to come, of course.
Right. Okay. Well, I guess the liberal media is everywhere, isn't it? It's over here, it's over there, it's basically all over the world. Why do you think the media is so liberal worldwide?
Well, I think it's in America, the media was got control from the 1950s and 60s on, especially from the 1960s. The part of the catalyst was the Vietnam War, but it was starting even before that, where virtually there's an excellent book by Bill O'Reilly, and most of the media at the time from the 1960s on was dominantly liberal, and from the time that the fairness doctrine in the radio changed under Ronald Reagan, then talk radio, Fox News, and others started to proliferate, and things started moving in a different direction. And we can see the contrast a lot more now. Before, there was not really so much of a contrast.
The opinion here, I don't know how much you pay attention to the talk radio industry that you just spoke of over here, but last week, of course, we observed the 50th anniversary of the assassination of President Kennedy. And a lot of people in the talk radio business opined that that was really when the liberal media started. It was a direct catalyst, a direct result of the assassination. Do you ascribe to that?
No, I think it increased at that time, but that was the time when there were a lot of incidents to do with Martin Luther King and then the young Kennedy, and it gave the impetus to it. But there was also the Vietnam War, and the Vietnam War was used largely as an excuse to attack the American institutions and government, and mostly our culture. From the Port Huron statement was part of the Students for Democratic Society, and they wanted, people don't realize that they think the movement at that time, like the Weathermen and the others, were to fight against the Vietnam War, but it actually started in the late 50s and really formed in around 1962. And this was a way to get the young people, the universities together to promote essentially what is really, without sounding extremist or conspiratorial, a Marxist worldview and a Marxist society, because that came over from the Frankfurt School, and it was infused throughout the universities at the time.
So you, and I realize we're getting off of the notes that I sent you. So you believe that the modern liberal here in America has a Marxist tendency?
Yes, the origins are in Marxist, because Marxism, virtually there is no liberal who would say he studied Marxism, he is a Marxist, he is a member of the Communist Party. But if we look back in the history, and I've challenged many liberals to do this, and they either refuse or change the subject as usual, but if you look at any history of the liberals from the 1890s on, it's heavily infused with Marxism. And that went from the progressives to the old left to the new left to today's liberals. In the past, for instance, in the 1920s and 30s, it was Lenin, then it was Stalin that they were they admired very much. And then there were those failures. They went over to Mao, and then after Mao, during the era of the new left, the new heroes became Ho Chi Minh. They even admired Pol Pot in the beginning.
That's just plain crazy. That
they
would admire him.
The resistance is quite incredible. That Pol Pot, it's obvious, mention the name, and he may be the worst person in modern history. but like Noam Chomsky said that he was an agrarian reformer. They found out about some of the murders. He said, oh, they're exaggerating. It's a cover-up. It's a lie. The United States government and CIA is making it up. Then the next step was, oh, it was only 2,000 or 3,000. And finally, it couldn't be denied. It was in the millions. And he wrote in Nation magazine, and Nations backed him up. He said that the American government drove them to a killing frenzy. So it was always America's fault. America was always wrong. And the Marxist-Leninists were right.
So that's very similar, if not exactly, what the mindset of the liberals here in the 21st century are, is that it's all America's fault. It's all our fault, and apparently we have to commit national suicide to make amends for that.
Yes, I am startled sometimes at how they can find, if they can't find it in the present, it's in the past, and the terms they make up, like we're still an imperial nation, and the imperialism changes over when they're pinned down to economic imperialism. So if McDonald's sets up a shop in Moscow and the people want it, that's American imperialism in the mind of the liberal. We're trying to control their economy.
That brings me to the quote that the folks that are watching on the video side of the show or watching the YouTube version of the show, which will be uploaded later on, and that is a quote from Thomas Jefferson that I thought was is very instructive as to how long this battle between I call it between conservatives and liberals has been going on. And this is the quote. Thomas Jefferson said, "On every question of construction of the Constitution, let us carry ourselves back to the time when the Constitution was adopted, recollect the spirit manifested in the debates, and instead of trying what meaning may be squeezed out of the text or invented against it, conform to the probable one in which it was passed." And that appears to be exactly what we are battling now here in the United States, isn't it?
Oh, it is. And I like the way Robert Bork referred to this, and not original intent, but original understanding. And we can't go into trying to analyze what they might have thought or what they had intended, but what were the words? What were the words at the time? And for example, the 14th Amendment was for the purpose of having blacks fully participate in our society. But the liberals extend that into all sorts of other groups. And then they read somehow the right to privacy gets into an issue basically over in the 1960s over condom distribution in the United States, and little by little that gets evolved into the right to have an abortion. It somehow originates from a right to privacy that was misread because of condom use in the United States, in Connecticut in the 1950s and 60s. And it's not in the Constitution. It's not there. To do with our morals, especially, it's not part of the Constitution. That's for states and local communities to decide, and that's what the founders wanted.
That is very interesting. I'm sorry, I am moving something around on my screen here. Okay, I have your book back up, and that seems to be the slippery slope of intent of the liberals to me. That if 1 and 1 equals 2, then we could also say that 1 and 1 might equal 3, and they just keep driving the point until everybody throws up their hands and says, "Okay, 1 and 1 equals 3." Is that?
And I think that's unfortunately that's one of the powers that they do have. That's one of two main ways: is they keep pressing and pressing and pressing, and the other is to put you on the defensive. I'm going to label you as some kind of phobic or emotional problem or bigot, and get you in a position to defend yourself. And then I'll get my way because I know you don't want to be labeled with these horrible things that I'm going to say about you. so you will give me the program that I want.
Why do people let them get away with it? And I ask that because that's I've got the very first paragraph of your book and the introduction up on the screen, and in it you said you spoke with a friend sometime back, and he gets intimidated by the liberals. And I think that happens a lot. I think we're seeing that a lot with the Republicans and people who could very well be conservatives in Washington, D.C., are being intimidated by the dogma that the liberals keep hammering people with. How can we get away from that? How can people either avoid it or combat against it?
I think the main way, and that's very interesting point that you brought up, because even George Bush, compassionate conservatism. So that was a kind giving in to the fear of being intimidated and labeled as being a cold-blooded, nasty conservative. I'm a compassionate conservative. And the main way, I think, is not to defend oneself, but to go on the attack. So if a liberal accuses the person of being a racist, for instance, we can point out that it is actually liberals, their policies, their ideology, their thinking is racist. They're assuming that different races and ethnic groups need help, and that means that they must think that they're inferior. So reverse it on the liberal and tell them that they're the racist and point out how they're the racist.
Yes, we see that a lot. It's very aggravating when I hear it and I see it, because that is exactly what they accuse you of being a racist, and their very actions appear to be racist in nature. When you're just sitting there and you're going, okay, well, everybody can go out and get a job if they want to, and they label that as racist. I have been lately thinking about, and actually I had a guest on last week that said this exact thing, and I don't know if you've ever thought about this or not, so I might be asking you a question that you might not have an answer to or an opinion on. But lately, we conservatives over here are seeing a lot of similarities between the tactics that the liberals are using and the tactics that the radical Muslims use, like the Muslim Brotherhood and whatnot, in that everybody who is not one of them is an infidel and needs to be destroyed or converted to their point of view. And it's okay to lie to the other person because you're just it's a means to an end. Do you see that a lot also?
Oh yes. The part that I think is, I haven't really thought that through, what you said, but what seems to me would be a lot in common is that the morality of it, from their point of view, the others are the infidel, the others are immoral. And liberals, almost all, actually believe that conservatives or even non-liberals are not moral people, therefore they don't deserve consideration. They don't deserve to be heard. They're wrong, they're mean-spirited, they're evil, they're nasty people, so why should I even listen to somebody like that? So they can just write them off, put a label on them as being bigoted or ignorant and dismissed.
That's an interesting point that I had not considered before. There's two different directions I could go in right now, but I think the one that I want to go in, because of what you just said, that the people that are not part of them or should be dismissed and everything else, and that goes to two items. And the first one was from 2011. Let me see here. The article date is October 5th, 2011. And this comes to us from the Daily Tech newsletter. And this was something that some of the liberals in New York State tried to do, and they tried to reclassify free speech as a privilege rather than a right guaranteed by the Constitution. And let me see here. It's they're trying to make it as trying to keep people from doing bullying, cyberbullying. So free speech can be considered a privilege rather than a right. Now, that happened in 2011, and you can pretty much dismiss that because nobody's done anything about it. However, very recently, in fact, around about the time that Harry Reid instituted the nuclear option in the Senate, Dianne Feinstein over in the Senate wants to have wants to actually put a law in the books that redefines free speech as a privilege. And wants to do that. This is very recently, in the past week or so, that she said this. Do you think they can get away with something like that?
That's quite amazing. I didn't know about that, and it's completely against our founding principles. I don't think that if it's framed well by the opponents, by the Republicans, Libertarians, and others, I don't think they'll be able to get away with it. But unfortunately, I suppose there's a chance that they could, but I don't think so. I hope not.
Yes, the article that I'm mentioning is from againstcronycapitalism.org. And let me read you a couple of paragraphs from this, and maybe you can expand on that thought a little bit more. Matt Drudge was right when he said last week that Ms. Feinstein was acting in a fascistic way. The woman is breathtaking in her control freakishness. And there's a video that goes along with it. She has no qualms trashing the most fundamental right there is, the right to speak freely. The great unwashed have been given a voice in the internet, which is troublesome in her view. We must license journalism, which is another thing they're trying to do. If it is licensed, the state can control it. It appears that she holds ordinary citizens who would speak up against a power structure in deep disdain. She may dislike them as much as she dislikes ordinary citizens with guns. Likely, she just assumes the two groups are probably the same folks, for the most part anyway, and should therefore be systematically curtailed. So apparently that's her mindset, is that first they want to regulate journalism. They want to dictate who is a journalist and who isn't a journalist, which is hogwash. And apparently they want to use that as part of their free speech as a privilege.
That's quite incredible. And the left has really been in an uproar for about 15 years since the Fairness in Doctrine, I call it the Unfairness, Fairness in Broadcasting Act, I call it the Unfairness Act, was part of radio, in which if one point of view was given, a balance of another point of view had to be, according to this law. And that was stopped around 1986 under Reagan, and it proliferated. The talk radio, the different news channels, and especially the internet. And I saw some statistics in which 80% of internet traffic in politics and this sort of thing is conservative. And obviously conservative radio has taken over, and in cable it's Fox News, and it's driving the liberals crazy because they have no control, and they're forced. Matt Drudge did a lot of things that forced them to react, and so the people can't, the news can't be filtered through the liberal media as it was in the past, because the blogosphere especially is really giving them a hard time. People like Matt Drudge are especially one of those immoral people who fights against the liberal propaganda.
Yes, and this show as well, we try to do that as much as possible to give them as many verbal gifts as we can on the internet radio here.
They're watching you. They're going to find some way to try to shut you down.
Oh, I am sure that they're watching me. We have several instances where we have been cut off from guests, taken offline. There's been a couple of times. We have smart meters in this area of Michigan, and there have been a couple of times when our power has been flashed on and off for about 30 seconds while I've been on the air. It's fairly obvious that they keep an eye on everybody, and it always happens when I have a highly controversial guest on. You are not controversial. You're just telling the truth, so hopefully they won't do anything, and they're probably still trying to figure out where the heck you are. Now, Jim, I have been reading recently, and tell me if you've heard about this or not, and whether or not you think they can get away with it. The FCC is attempting to gain control over free speech on the Internet and institute the fairness doctrine on the Internet. I believe the proposed regulation is open for public comments right now. And I think this is the third or fourth time they've tried to do this, but I got a sneaking suspicion that this time they might be able to gain enough traction to do it. Do you think, what would happen to the Internet if they instituted the fairness doctrine?
The liberals would probably little by little get back in control. I'm hoping that they won't be able to do it because they have tried during the Clinton era and after. It's been brought up and they tried again and again. But they have a hard time now because there are so many alternatives. The rationale for it was, and to a point it's understandable, let's say the 1950s and the early 1960s, there were only 10 stations maybe, and very little news, so let's give some balance to the news. That was the rationale. But now, how many cable stations can someone buy for not too much money? 200? And on the computer, there's so many alternatives. So it's not that there's one media that's in control anymore. They can't make that argument because we have so many things to which we can turn. So I'm hoping that it won't go through as it didn't go through in the past.
Yeah, so we can always hope. Unfortunately, they seem to be running around willy-nilly with their chopping axe at the roots of the Constitution, attempting to chop the Constitution down, which is it's very disturbing. And I apologize, Jim, if it sounds like I'm jumping around because there's so much for us to talk about, and my schedule is extremely hectic today. Apparently, every customer in the industry that I'm in has decided that they need something right now the day before a major holiday.
Oh,
yeah. So we were running around like chickens with their heads cut off on the day before a major holiday, and I had exactly 20 minutes to get ready for the show, which is very not a lot of fun.
I hope you can relax a bit over this holiday coming up tomorrow, your time.
I am actually taking 4 glorious days off.
Oh, good.
Yes, which is going to give me ample opportunity to work on the websites for the networks and a few other things, get some technical things squared away so that we can have more hosts on the network.
So you are going to work?
I'm working from home so I can get up and walk away whenever I want. I'm going to work in my pajamas is what I'm going to do. And cook a turkey. There is one thing that I wanted you to touch on before we really get into the meat of the book, and that is with President Obama. And you are in a different country, half a world away, so maybe you have a more articulate view than I do. It's my belief that, and this is also the subject of an article in American Thinker as well, very recently, that this particular president is showing a lot of tyrannical signs in his personality and how he interacts with the public and the types of executive orders and laws that he seeks to have passed. And I'm wondering, I'm going to try to phrase this the right way, but I don't know if I can. I think he might be one temper tantrum or psychotic episode from instituting full tyrannical control over the United States. That's my belief. And the American Thinker article seems to go in that direction too, though they don't really come out and say it. What they say is, can anything be done to thwart the efforts by Barack Obama and his minions to concentrate all power in his administration? What's going on with that, do you think? We're seeing more and more power being gathered by the executive branch and taken away from the legislative branch.
Yes, and presidents, especially progressive presidents, have always tried to do that, Wilson being one of the ones, and Roosevelt even before him, even though he was a Republican, he was progressive. And if there is an emergency, a national crisis that is a real crisis, then there could be some danger of his doing that now. But his approval rating's down. The people don't support him as they used to. Even a lot of Democrats are turning against him in the Senate. As things are now, I don't see how that's possible. But if a crisis comes up, and that's how during our Great Depression, how the New Deal got in place, and during the First World War, there were government controls of transportation, energy, etc., and the progressives wanted to keep it up after the war was over. Fortunately, it stopped. That's how I see it could be possible. Otherwise, at this point, I think he's losing some power.
So you think it's not as a dangerous a situation as some of us believe?
I don't see it happening if things continue the way they are, and he's slipping even more and more, especially with what's coming out with the health care.
Yes.
People, you know.
The healthcare debacle is absolutely mind-boggling. It's
yes.
I've never, I'm 55 years old. I've lived through a lot of things. I lived through the oil embargoes. I've lived through Ronald Reagan, Jimmy Carter, LBJ. I was alive at the Kennedy assassination, but I was only 5 years old at the time. But I have never seen anything done by the government that has been such a gigantic debacle that they, every time something goes wrong, these people seem to want to double down on their bet.
Yes.
Why do you think they're doing that?
I've noticed a pattern with liberals, progressives, New Left, is they will never admit defeat, even when the programs that they set up are failures. The rationale is there's not enough funding, or the conservative reactionaries, wealthy people, whoever the enemy of the time is, have thwarted the whole process, and it's because of them that we are not able to do it. They're obstructionists in the House right now. That's what the term is. It's a nice sounding term that sounds like we're just trying to stop the government from doing nice things for people, whereas that is what our government is about, to discuss and not just give in to what the president wants at the moment.
Yes, that is.
So they're going to double down. And I think I saw an interesting article that said to be thankful to Ted Cruz for something that is rather indirect, that he forced a discussion about this health care. He put the Democrats in a position of having to defend all sorts of things, and now this is coming out with people not registering, the website problems and all, and it's coming together. The people are seeing this, and some states are getting together right now to try to resist. I think there are 11 states that have gotten together to try to have be independent of this Obamacare.
Yes, in fact, who was it last week? I think it was Rush Limbaugh last week, said that for all of the attacks they made on Ted Cruz and folks like him, it certainly appears that they were correct. And they may have actually done the more liberal Republicans a gigantic favor in the long run by exposing all of this and forcing everybody to see it.
Yes.
Speaking of the liberal Republicans, do you think that they're going to take to heart what Cruz has been able to do and say, you know what, we might be able to actually fight this? Or do you think they're just going to, like, go along to get along as they have been doing?
Well, just as you said, they're forcing that discussion, and I hope they take the principled stance. And they seem to be moving, especially under John Boehner, in that direction. And I'm a bit worried about November 2014, that they'll get it together to get more power in the House and hopefully change the composition of the Senate. And do you have a sense of that part? That we have some hope for the Senate this next year?
It's interesting that you said that, because I was actually going to ask you that next, believe it or not. This thing with the 2014 election, I see Obama's popularity dropping like a rock. The popularity of the Democrats is dropping. Now they're trying to distance themselves from the health care, from the Affordable Health Care Act, and they're trying to distance themselves from it to now they're against it when they in fact voted for it. And I think what we are going to be seeing is that all will be forgiven, and Obama's popularity will rise again, and the Democrats' popularity in general will rise again, and they will put the Republicans on the offensive. And I believe the way things have been going in 2014, it will be a Democratic rout.
Oh, that scenario is possible, yeah.
Yeah, the leaders in the Republican Party just don't have the wherewithal to lead. They, it's like, okay, what can we give up on this time? Is essentially what they do every time with every issue. Can you give us any hope in that regard? Do you think I'm wrong? Please tell me I'm wrong.
I'm hoping you are, that the healthcare mandate will keep going downhill as it has. Maybe a lot of young people. I can't imagine young people who usually don't even want to. They believe they can live forever, and they often don't get any health insurance, or are told that they're going to have to spend 3 and 4 times as much. So if the money is not available, these quirks keep up, and Obama keeps with his decline this way. But unfortunately, I'm speaking really in the negative, am I not? That the Republicans can get control if the Democrats make mistakes and lose popularity. And I would like to say that if the Republicans get together and people get supporting them, and it may even be a bit of a sacrifice to take a principled stand and lose some votes here and there, but to stick to the stand, because I like the expression that Goldwater really won the election in 1980.
Yes, I agree with that. I agree with that wholeheartedly. 100%, as a matter of fact. In fact, before you came on, while I was giving you a few minutes to get your stuff together so that I could give you another call, I was playing Ronald Reagan clips from his 1964 speech, as a matter of fact.
Oh, yeah.
It is one of my favorite speeches of all time. It speaks across the decades, doesn't it?
Yes, I have it bookmarked on my computer. I put it on every once in a while when things don't look too good.
In fact, let me see what I have here. Here we go. Here's a good one.
This idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government, or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves. You and I are told increasingly we have to choose between a left or right. Well, I'd like to suggest there is no such thing as a left or right. There's only an up or down. Man's old age dream, the ultimate in individual freedom consistent with law and order, or down to the ant-heap of totalitarianism. And regardless of their sincerity, their humanitarian motives, those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course.
That gives me chills just listening to it every time. How about you?
It didn't. I couldn't hear it from here. I guess it didn't come over the telephone.
Darn! Oh, shoot! And it should, as a matter of fact, because it should have come through. I apologize for that. It was Reagan's couple of sentences about trading freedom for security. And the little intellectual elite
him
in a
up
far-off
at the
land.
podium, and there's some scenes in the background about what's going on over in Russia. That's what I.
Yeah,
I know
some little intellectual elite in a far-off city dictating our lives for us. Is that what we really want?
Yes.
Why is it that we seem to be going down that path, Jim?
It's been a steady trend. It's that I hesitate to say that we've asked the government more and more for support, handouts, and especially security. And there was an excellent book I was reading that really woke my mind up by Mansfield, Our Constitutional Soul. And we're seeing things in Europe, we're seeing it in Japan, we're probably going to see it a little later already in the United States. It's not so much that we get the right things done by government or the experts or the right programs or the great economists. It's that government simply can't do what people are now expecting it to do. It can't. It's doomed. There is no way that it can. And people are increasing, except the hope here that we have, in contrast to Europe, Americans at least get a sense that we're not willing to pay more for the welfare state. So we're still a bit independent with that, but they're chipping away and trying to get more people, not just people who are impoverished, but promising education to send our children to school, to college, for the middle class, good Social Security benefits, all sorts of medical benefits, etc. So little by little, people are buying into that system, and it's a hard one to fight against.
Yes, it is. Getting something for free is always nice. Another thing.
For instance, George Bush tried with Social Security just to have an alternative. He got stopped very, very quickly, that a young person could buy into a savings account, essentially with all the same amount of money, employer contributions and this sort of thing. And that puzzles me, that it was an option, that people can stay with the Social Security if they want. Why was something like that not considered? I couldn't really figure that out.
I think I know why. Because they have been gutting the funds in the Social Security system for decades now to finance other bits of their liberal agenda. And there's no money left in there, so they need the young people to continue putting money into the Social Security system so the people that are retiring now or retiring in the near future, like myself, can continue to draw on the Social Security system. And I believe they're probably planning on just doing away with it once the current generation of young people that are putting into it get old enough, because there won't be any money left. It'll be bankrupt.
Yes, yes. And then present the alternatives as just supporting big business, et cetera, and present it the right way, and it looks as though George Bush was just trying to help his cronies out there to get sell more stocks. Unfortunate.
Yes. I actually have a quote from James Madison, I think is what you were talking about just a few minutes ago. And he said in Federalist 47, the accumulation of all powers, the legislative, executive, and judiciary, in the same hands, whether of one, a few, or many, or whether hereditary, self-appointed, or elective, may justly be pronounced the very definition of tyranny, which appears is what we have.
Yes. And in the courts, even more quietly, the courts are taking more of the self-government and the power of our state and national legislators away.
Yes.
Take the example of the burning the flag. 48 states had that as illegal to publicly burn the flag, but the Supreme Court, with the help of the ACLU, declared it was part of our First Amendment to be able to burn the flag. And so more than the issue itself, that's what I try to focus on in the book, is what is the reasoning behind it? What is the basis? Why are people thinking in that direction? And they've taken away states' powers because the legislators who were elected by the people in the various states felt that was an affront, that was ugly, immoral to be burning a flag in public, so those individual states, too, voted that it was okay. The states decided. Now they can't decide something like that anymore.
So the states have basically abdicated some of their rights.
Yes, little by little, the Supreme Court is using due process and the 14th Amendment, expanding it to dictate almost everything that the states can and cannot regulate and set up as law.
That's so disturbing to think about, that they're doing this. This is apparently why Harry Reid instituted what they call the nuclear option in the Senate, so they could pack the courts as quickly as possible with people that they want.
Yes.
That is very sad.
It was very important that we have our next president is not Hillary Clinton or one of her cronies, because some people on the Supreme Court, like Scalia, are getting older and they're going to be retiring. And I hope they decide not to retire in the next 3 years before Obama is out of there. But we have some that are getting up there. By the time Mr. Scalia will be 90 years old. Wow. During Obama's last year, and that's a little scary. And Kennedy will be 80 years old by that last year. Let's hope they stay in good health.
Let's hope they stay in good health and stay the course and stay there until we can figure out a way to correct this. Do you think, speaking of the next election in 2016, do you think there's even a chance that we could elect a conservative president? Or do you think the liberals have penetrated into the Republican Party and the Democratic Party and the media to such an extent that they will once again give us a choice between the lesser of two evils? Or do you think somebody can actually break through that?
I think I have to use the word hope, but I think that somebody can. Yes, I think somebody can.
Who do you think would be the most likeliest?
It's hard to say right now, but I kind of like Jindal, Bobby Jindal in Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder about the governor of New Jersey. He's kind of it's hard to tell what he really is.
Yeah, I have spoken to several people that I thought were conservatives, but actually turned out to be rhinos that just love the governor of New Jersey and think that he would make a swell president, which gives me enough information to say he probably would not be a swell president in the long run.
Yeah.
That's whenever I hear the rhinos, the party, the Republican left say that somebody's going to be a really good candidate, I have a very, very bad feeling about that. Do you think that a third party could actually win this time around? Do you think people are fed up enough yet?
No, I don't think a third party could win. I think it could it would take a number of election cycles that maybe it could get into power, but not at this point. There is one bit of hope, though, that libertarians are attracting a lot of young people. So if the next candidate mixes in a bit of libertarianism or is inclined in that direction, a lot of young people might be able to, just getting out, by young I mean in their 20s and 30s into even their early 40s, because they're going to be looking at the state of the economy, and that could attract those undecided voters.
Well, I just think we're going to get the same old, and get the lesser of two evils that we're going to get to choose between, and it's going to wind up being no solution at all. That's what I'm afraid of, to be honest with you.
Yes, and during our last election cycle, it seemed as though people were getting more and more diplomatic, to put it that way. And moderate is really a term, I think, for not having firm convictions.
Yes, that's. I agree with that. Getting to your book, now that we've established a good framework of how both of us are thinking about this, and I think we're pretty well aligned on it. Your book, I have it up on the screen for the video side right now. You've separated it into two parts. An introduction to the modern liberal, and part two, which is about the rest of us, represented by conservatives in America. Tell us about part one of the book, the liberals, and who they are, what their mindset is, what makes them tick, how to recognize one. Everything you have in the book.
The main characteristic, and if a person asks a liberal set of questions can get to this characteristic, is just as we've been talking about, virtually everything will get deferred to what I call the central authority, and I use that instead of the federal government, because this is a mindset that we saw in the Soviet Union, in Germany in the 1930s and 40s, is to defer to that central authority. And from the liberal point of view, from their history, it makes perfect sense, because if we can perfect man and change society, we can't have people doing different things all over the place like these conservatives, and people being independent and making their own choices, and states having different laws. It has to be unified, or this project can't work. And the only way to unify it is to defer virtually everything that's important to the central authority, to the federal government. So when liberals will talk about their issues and concerns and their projects, it's always to do a project for the federal government. One time I reported it in the book, I sat and listened to Rachel Maddow, the name sticks in my throat, for 10 hours, and then randomly pick some Fox News and other news outlets, conservative news outlets. And what were the problems? Each person would bring up an issue or a problem, of course, discuss them, and then propose possible solutions. It was 100% of the time in a 10-hour period that MSNBC said something the federal government should do, a tax, a program, an oversight committee, a regulation, something. Whereas in the conservative end, of course, there's some of that the federal government should do, but what should parents do? What should communities do? What should churches do and organizations? So that, in a nutshell, is the central characteristic, to turn everything over to the federal government, and then, of course, the experts in the federal government, and a lot of them are bureaucracy. And I think people don't realize the extent of the power of the bureaucracies, because the ERA, the environment, what's the
EPA.
EPA, they can come in and tell you what you can do with your property and your house. and there is no way to stop them. Unlike our legislators, we can wait for 2 years and get them out of there. But the bureaucracies have incredible power that's turned over to them. They can create their own laws. They essentially are both the legislative and the executive branch and the judicial branch. They set the laws, they determine which one is right, and then they enforce them. And nothing can be done to stop them. It's a long process. Something can be done, take it to the courts and that, but it's a long, tedious process that people usually give into.
And, of course, since they're stacking the courts with judges that see things the liberal way, taking these bureaucrats to court is going to be less and less effective, because the courts are going to begin to become more and more liberal, even more liberal than they are now, which is something that's very, very disturbing. I was listening to somebody today who said that we need to stop being a country of regulations and once again become a country of laws. And a lot of people took issue with that. They said, well, that's the same thing. And he said, no, it's not. One is laws made by the legislator that is a representative of his constituents, and the other one is regulations made by a bureaucrat that answers to virtually nobody.
And there is one additional thing to that, too, that I can support that 100%, is that if there is a regulation, it means that everybody is a suspected criminal, lawbreaker, regulation breaker, that because one incident happened in one place, a regulation is set up, and the whole country must abide by that. And there was one small situation when I was in the United States in which a father-son set up a gym down the street, and people loved it. The neighborhood came in, but the regulators came in, and because of the regulations, they had to have the mirrors a certain height, sinks, everything. It broke the back of these people, and what happened? A national chain took over, and they lost the business to the national chain. So what I'm trying to say is we all have to abide by these regulations, even though we are not going to break them. 1 in a million people will break them, but the liberals will say, well, we don't want even one person to get hurt. We don't want one person to be harmed at all. So the whole country has to follow these regulations. Rather than if it's a law, the lawbreaker gets severely punished. If somebody pollutes a river and knows that it's being done, I think the government should come down very, very hard legally on that company, that person, and just sue the hell out of them and make them an example that the next lawbreaker is going to really suffer and probably go bankrupt and be imprisoned, rather than making every single person in the United States follow these horrendous, complicated, expensive regulations.
Well, how about the regulatory aspects as far as the regular citizen is concerned? I agree with you about the large businesses. We need laws to protect, to keep large businesses from doing harm, I suppose. But it would seem to me that it would be much more effective if the people at large, the Americans themselves, were more self-policing, wherein you see your neighbor dumping oil down the storm drain. That would, because the people in the neighborhood, the average citizen is no longer empowered to do anything about that. To go up to the guy and say, "Hey, what the hell are you doing? That's against the law. You're not allowed to do that." And immediately they go to, instead of that, they go to the regulatory aspect and call up the EPA or something like that, and that enables the EPA. What is that? Is my thinking correct on that? Should we try to, as citizens, take back more of the power that has been vested to us by the Constitution?
Oh, most certainly. And I'm not a proponent of we should do what the Japanese do, but I was walking about 9 o'clock at night. I was walking down the street, and I saw 4 men with certain armbands on, and I can read and speak Japanese, and they had something about protecting children on them. And I asked them, what are you doing? And they go to the convenience stores and places that are still open, and if a teenager is there, they tell them to go home. And they walk around all the places. You should be home and studying and going to bed to get ready to go to school tomorrow. And I can't imagine if that happened in the United States. We're violating their civil rights. Who is a stranger? How does he have the right to tell a teenager what to do? And the parents of the teenager, instead of thanking them, would probably start taking some legal action against it. And in that sort of environment, it could be very discouraging to try to police your own neighborhoods and people.
Yes, we do see that here, where somebody does the right thing. Recently, I think it was right here in Michigan, we had an employee of the Walmart that saw a woman being attacked in the parking lot and stopped the guy from attacking the woman, and he was fired for his trouble.
Really?
Yeah, really. Walmart fired him and said it's against company policy. You're not allowed to step into any altercations with customers. And they offered him his job back in the end, and he told them to stick it. He doesn't want to work for them anymore. He won't work for a company like that. We see that a lot. You know, when they see somebody smacking around a kid in a store, and they step in, and they're the ones that wind up getting in trouble and getting arrested. Yeah. It's just
Walmart. I'm guessing Walmart was probably afraid of a huge lawsuit.
Probably, I would think so. But a huge lawsuit or doing the right thing. Would you attract more customers by firing employees that protect the customers, or would you get more customers by protecting the customers that are being harassed?
Yeah.
I would argue that if somebody is beating my wife up in the parking lot, if a Walmart employee just walks by them, I'll never go into another Walmart for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
That's very, very disturbing. In your book, in the very first part at the beginning, you describe what Mark Levin and Bill O'Reilly and John Diggins call the liberals. That would be progressives, left-wingers, collectivists, liberals, leftists, socialists, and even communists. And you put forth that it would be better for all of us if we decided on one specific term for them, rather than a bunch of willy-nilly terms that each individual commentator uses. What term did you have in mind to use for them that would be descriptive?
Well, of course, I use modern liberals to differentiate from classical liberals, which our founders actually were liberals. But if I've challenged a number of liberals to please look up what classical liberalism is, and it's laissez-faire. Milton Friedman is considered a classical liberal, and it's a minimum of government and a maximum of human freedom. But I think another term might be statism, because it's a constant deferral to the central authority, to the state. But as I also mentioned in the book, one of justices of the Supreme Court said, I can't define pornography, but I know it when obscenity, but I know it when I see it. And when Hannity uses a term that Sowell started, which was the anointed, I think Hannity says the self-anointed, as opposed to I like that one.
Yeah.
We do know this group of people that we're talking about. The liberals will say we're all individuals, etc. But why is it that they seem to all have the same mindset and attack people who don't agree with their programs and ideas? They are a pretty, it's not a conspiratorial group, but they are a culture. There is a certain liberal culture to which they adhere and have very similar values.
In your book, right after that part about setting a collective name for them, and I guess statists would be pretty good because they couldn't really defend against that particular term, calling them a statist. You put forth the unifying characteristics of the modern liberal. Can you go through those unifying characteristics so that we can spot liberals? Because I think Jim, a lot of the problem that people are having right now is here in America, the great vast majority of us are in fact conservative. But we hear certain keywords, certain key phrases that may fool us into thinking that somebody is has more of a conservative bent in their political leanings rather than what they really are, which would be the statist or the leftist. What are the unifying characteristics of these people that folks can look for?
There are a number of them, but just to back up just a bit on that is what the liberals want to do, is to present themselves typically as moderates, and if they can do that, it will make conservative views look extreme. So that's one of the tactics that they use. They are part of the mainstream, but conservatives by Gallup polls are twice as many as liberals. And undecided are about 40%, moderate undecided 40%, conservatives 40%, and liberals about 20%. But outside of that central characteristic of wanting to defer everything to the central authority, there are a number of others. Like in economics, success is from luck or from oppression, or it's from theft. So successful people, and I would ask people to use different terms. Instead of saying capitalists, we get an image of these rich people who are controlling companies and this kind of thing. They're the successful people, or using the free market. And liberals look at a zero-sum game in which if somebody has become successful, they've taken something from somebody else has lost. Whereas conservatives look at, we're all benefiting from these sorts of things. And then they come up with the military-industrial complex, which, if there is anyone, it was started by the Democrats in the 1940s. And history is looked at in terms of economics. That's from Marx. There's more to our country, and I don't like to hear conservatives also focusing only on economics in our country, how we can be more productive and economically prosperous and successful, because there's much, much more to America than that. There's liberty, there's a morality, there's a unique tradition and inheritance that we had that has been passed on throughout the whole world. And the rest of the world likes and imitates our culture. So to focus solely on economics, I think could be a mistake. I wouldn't like people to look at America as just a place where you can make a lot of money, in other words.
No, it's we give you the freedom to make a lot of money, or we did at one time. I have
and freedom to do anything you want, really.
Yes. In the notes that I sent you earlier, yesterday, I think it was, I have a definition, a verbatim definition of what a conservative is, and I think I'd like to read that to help contrast who exactly the liberals are, so that we can, people can make more of a better judgment on their own, something to help educate them. Because what we're doing now on this show is we are giving people solutions to the problems rather than just crying and complaining about them. So it's about 4 or 5 paragraphs long. It'll only take me about a minute or so. So I'm going to do that if that's okay with you.
Oh, please.
Okay. This is actually paraphrasing a speech that Rush Limbaugh gave about 5 or 6 years ago, and it is one of the best descriptions of what a conservative is, and this is essentially what he said. The problem that we have not done a good job of defining is who we are. We have made the mistake of assuming that who we are and what we stand for is clear. Obviously, it is not, judging by what we see in the media and in pop culture. Conservatives love people, not just the middle-aged white men that we are portrayed as. We love every walk of life, every person, every child, every man, every woman. We believe that every single human being is capable of great things. We believe that every single person can raise a child as they wish, can speak as they wish, can protect themselves as they wish, feed themselves as they wish. We believe that government has virtually no right whatsoever to come into our homes, pry into our communications, our personal business, or how we conduct our lives. It is not the government's business to know or do anything about these things. When we conservatives look at this country, we see Americans. We do not see blacks, we do not see whites, Chinese, Asians, Mexicans. We see Americans. Color, race, creed makes no difference. That is one of the key differences between the modern liberal and conservatives. We see human beings, not a group to be exploited for political or monetary gain. We don't see victims. We see potential of the human experience, potential that exists in every single person, every one of us. We conservatives believe that this potential is waiting to be unleashed. Government is a throttle on that potential. Government is a hand around the neck of the potential of all humans. Is that what you would consider a good definition of conservative?
Oh, I like it very much. You sent that to me. I read that, and I really like that. Yes, it clarifies a conservative position, and the only thing to add to that is that's what our founders really intended for us. The Constitution essentially tells the federal government what it can't do, and it limits it so people are allowed. There's a sphere of privacy that the Constitution gives states, communities, and individuals, so we can become what we decide, not what the government decides, and that's what Limbaugh was saying in that paragraph you read.
Yes, I think while I was sitting here listening to you answer that, I think I may have hit on exactly what my problem is and what I think a lot of conservatives' problems are in resisting liberalism, and that is that we don't see the world as they do. We see people. We see a land of opportunity, an opportunity for anybody. We don't care if they're black, white, Chinese, Mexican. We don't care who they are, man or woman. Everybody has the potential for success, and they should be allowed to do it. And I think part of the problem is we see that, and liberals see an opportunity to subject people to their control, and we don't seem to realize it.
Yes, that is another large problem that conservatives and independent, let's say, non-liberals have, is just as Limbaugh said, we're focusing on our churches, our families, our work, our daily life. We're living. And liberals, the more vociferous ones, are the politics of meaning. So virtually everything you do, even the way one raises one's child, has political implications. And most people just want to go on with their lives. So when they encounter a liberal who has been thinking this way for years and years and been influenced like this, it's hard to go up to respond to that sort of overwhelming aggression that they have sometimes.
Yeah, it's very frustrating for the majority of us, because all we want to do is we want to go to work at our jobs, do a good job for the company, do a good job and be proud of our work, come home and expect that the government is just going to leave us the hell alone. We don't want to go on the internet and know that the government is spying on us. We don't want to talk on the phone and know that the government is spying on us. We don't need them knocking on the door to find out whether or not we smoke cigarettes or have the correct health insurance or anything else. We just want them to leave us to hell alone.
Yes.
And they go from the opposite direction, and it seems that I think that's where the conservatives are really lacking, most of us, is that we just want to be left alone and don't realize that we have to fight against what they're doing.
Yes, they're pushing us into a corner. And then when conservatives do respond, then they say, we're the ones who are trying to get the government involved.
Yeah, exactly. And it goes, I forget who, the guy that dedicated his book to Lucifer. I forget the author's name. I'm having a brain fart here.
Oh, Alinsky?
Alinsky, yes. Push, shove, attack. I have modified that as actually to push, shove, kill. But push, shove, attack is what they do. They push you, and then when you respond to them, they shove you and say, "How dare you?" and attack you. How dare you defend yourself? How can we, as conservatives, how can we defend ourselves without being attacked? How is that possible? And how can we deal with it when we are attacked?
One of the things besides going on the attack ourselves is to get two things, to get the liberals to define their underlying principles and logic. Then they fly into rages and start the name-calling because they don't have anything. They have series of programs. They don't have any underlying, what is your morality? What is your principle? On what are you basing this? Well, we want to help. We have compassion. What does compassion mean? What do you mean looking at the total society? And the other one is to get them to refer to the Constitution, because I think it's still almost a sacred book in a document in the United States, and people have respect for it. 2% of the people want actually to have it trashed and have a new one, and I would say that they're within those 20% of the liberals. So that means 1 out of 10 liberals actually would want to trash our Constitution. But they'll never say that in public, never. But get them to show how that is actually a constitutional principle as much as possible, and they sputter and they get embarrassed and they don't have an answer.
No, they never do.
So they'll go in their other direction, that you're some kind of bigot that wants to have Jim Crow laws back in the States.
Yes. Does not removing God and the Constitution from our lives, doesn't that in fact harm people? Isn't that in a nutshell what the problem of the liberal is, and their mindset? They remove God and the Constitution from everything, and what do you have left? You just have an empty vessel.
Remove? You mean that the word God is not in the Constitution?
Not just removing the basic belief of divine unity. As the founders call it, the Creator, God, if you will, the one that gives us our rights naturally, not the government. And the Constitution and the Declaration are very clear on that our rights and our privileges come from God, not from the government. And the liberals have thrown that away. And isn't that, in a nutshell, what their problem is?
That's a large part of it. I think there really is a war to get God removed, every vestige of it, within sight or sound from the public sphere. And I asked about the Constitution because I was debating with some liberals recently. They said it's a secular document. And in one sense, technically they could be right, but the introduction, the statement of principles in our Declaration refers to the Creator several times. And those two can't be separated. But the liberals try to separate it and say, since it wasn't mentioned in the Constitution, we have a secular document, which we do not, because the principle of our Creator, our rights come from our Creator, is in the Declaration, and that's what started the whole thing, of course. So they're wrong on that, and most state constitutions originally, and for a good 20 years, had religious qualifications to hold office, but not at the federal level, of course. but there is a concerted war on. The ACLU wants to get "In God We Trust" off of our coins and our dollars. There was a girl in Rhode Island, just in a high school, who got the Ten Commandments taken out of the school, and then in Massachusetts, under God in the Pledge of Allegiance. I don't know what finally happened with that, but the ACLU was involved with that to get that taken out of the pledge for the children.
It's very disturbing and depressing to think about
But
how
people should
they're
know about the
attacking.
Freedom Alliance for Freedom Alliance, that now has lawyers that will help school systems fight back, and they're free, and they're winning some cases. And I strongly recommend people check this organization out, maybe even contribute to it and watch what they're doing. Children can now have Christmas carols in schools. A lot of schools don't know about it, for instance, and they get a call from the local ACLU and say, we're going to take you to court. And they get frightened and they stop the Christmas carols, whereas they legally can have those in schools.
Yes, they can. I have the Freedom Alliance website up on the screen for those of you on the video side or watching on YouTube. It is freedomalliance.org, freedomalliance.org. And the price of liberty is eternal vigilance is their byline on there. We've actually featured them on the show a couple of times, and they are a very good organization. They do some excellent work. Sometimes I actually, lately, have actually been agreeing with some of the things that the ACLU stands for, and it makes me feel dirty in some little way. Do you think morally, and this is probably something you can't answer, but do you think morally it's okay to support some of the things that the ACLU stands for and not others?
Yes. And they've changed themselves. The person who started it, Roger Baldwin, said the goal is communism in about 1922. And then during the 40s and into the 50s, it became a good organization. And then it went corrupt and got involved with attacking religion and extremist causes from the crazy 1960s.
Yeah, they invaded. In fact, that's who's in power in the government right now. And we're seeing the fruits of their, I just call it idiocy since the name of the show is Surrounded by Idiots. I call it idiocy, the fruits of their idiocy. We have a bunch of liberal professor lounge type people that pontificate on what they think is best for people, with virtually no real-world experience, and here they are dictating our lives, and we see the result of that now.
And it's unfortunate that the young people go to school and they're 18, 19 years old, and they're a captive audience for those people, especially in the social sciences.
Okay, we've talked about the liberals, who they are, what they stand for, what they're doing, how to recognize them. And I think we should spend the rest of the show on what we can do to both circumvent them, battle them, and maybe even evangelize to them to try to get them to see the error of their ways. Are you up for that at this early hour over there?
Oh, of course, anytime.
Okay. In your book, let's see, the title of this part is Who Are the Modern Liberals? You say, discover for yourself with a simple experiment. First of all, virtually all news shows, liberal, conservative, moderate, or otherwise, have a similar format. Topics of importance are selected and discussed, and then they are usually followed by recommendations to solve them. Choose a television program, magazine, or website that is manifestly favored by modern liberals, such as MSNBC, the Huffington Post website, or Nation magazine. Then, when solutions are suggested, notice how these are to be carried out, which is by the regulations of the central government rather than by the people or by passing laws. Can you expound on that a little bit?
Yes, that was the part of the experiment that I mentioned before, to do with listening to Rachel Maddow for screeching for 10 hours, and looking at some other news sources, that virtually every solution, that's one way to tell a liberal, virtually every solution is a federal government solution, not a boycott of a business, but the federal government coming in and regulating the business. So they will always want to set up a new bureaucracy, a new regulation, a new tax, a new oversight committee. It will always be deferring to some agency, some program in the federal government. And we can see that easily if we look at any of their sites, or radio, or I don't even think there's hardly any on the radio anymore, which is fortunate. There used to be some, but people didn't listen.
Yes, people
don't listen anymore.
They don't listen to them. That's more proof that they're not only wrong, but they're in the vast minority.
Yes.
I find myself thinking sort of like a liberal sometimes. When I see a problem, I sometimes think of what solution can the government provide me, rather than what solution can the people provide for this problem. How can we combat that way of thinking in ourselves? Because I think a lot of us do it, and that's why one of the reasons why we allow liberals to stay in power. What educational sources can I direct people to read? That's simple enough for the average person to be able to read and absorb without a lot of concentrating.
In the back of the book, I don't know if you can get that on the screen, from page 301, I listed by categories, for instance, Ronald Reagan or our Constitution or Marxism or economics. I listed a number of books, and I put them in order of introductory to more complex. So, for instance, I think I'm turning the pages here for our Constitution and our history. One overall, A History of the American People by Paul Johnson. And for our own history, conservative history, it's excellent. And the other one by Matthew Spaulding about our Constitution. I love the title here. We Still Hold These Truths, Rediscovering Our Principles, Reclaiming Our Future.
And there's also...
That is a great introduction to it.
David Horowitz is on that list as well.
Yes.
And I actually... I had forgotten about this, but I wanted to ask your permission to use some of those references in your book on one of my websites. Specifically, that list of most excellent websites that you have in there, where people can go to get their news and become educated.
Oh, please use anything that's in there. Feel free to use any.
Oh, excellent! Because I'm trying to educate people as much as possible. I have a internet homepage. It's called Zamistan, and it's basically a page of links, a list of links, and links to the interviews that I've done, and that sort of thing. And I always try to put as many conservative links on there as I can. And a lot of yours I have not even thought of or heard of. And I thought, you know what, I need to put all of those on there so that people can read them, along with all of these references that you have in here. That these are, you are exactly correct. These are most excellent.
There's for the free market, freetochoose.tv. That's Milton Friedman gives a series of lectures, and they're so interesting, and they're for a broad variety of people. Very, very educational. And I think Arnold Schwarzenegger introduces the videos and talks about how Milton Friedman made him a conservative. It's a little debatable how much of a conservative he is, but he gives a good introduction.
That is, that's exactly what I was thinking. When did Arnold become a conservative? When did that happen?
In name only until he got what he wanted.
I think a lot of speaking of that, I think a lot of with Arnold is, I think he actually is a conservative, but once you're elected to governor of California the way it is, he just get beaten down, and probably made decisions as governor that he wouldn't have if he were the governor of, say, Arizona or Texas. That's what I think.
He did bring out something interesting, that he came to the United States. He has his thick Austrian accent, but he came to the United States basically broke, and look what he accomplished. And then he talks about how free the United States is and how we have to maintain our principles. And he's a typical success story to rise to that level.
Yes. He is actually one of my role models, believe it or not. He, just the sort of things he did to become a competitive bodybuilder. Over in Austria, what he used to do is he used to take trees. Picture this. There's Arnold Schwarzenegger as a young kid, as a teenager, and he's got a section of a tree that's about 20 feet long, weighs a few hundred pounds, and he's got it chained to his upper torso, and he's running up hills with this tree chained to his back. Because he didn't have any free weights or bicycles or anything else, and that's how he trained. It's a remarkable story when you learn about Arnold Schwarzenegger's early life and how he came to this country. So getting on with solutions, that ways that we can combat against the modern liberal. I believe you have a section in your book about that. I'm not sure what chapter it is. Maybe you can tell me which chapter it is so I could go to that part. We can talk about that for the rest of the show.
Well, the last part would be the Taking America Back, and the chapter 13, I think it is. So the first part would hopefully give people an introduction of how liberals think, rather than each specific issue that they bring up and trying to analyze it in terms of economics and the effects it will have on the country, etc. The underlying premises and where they're coming from, their mindset. And then understanding that, other things fall into place, why they're doing what they're doing. The healthcare issue is not so much an economic issue as it is of the role of government, and that government should take care of us, and government knows best, which is part of the mindset for, not recent, it's been going on since the 1890s, that if there is we can scientifically engineer and control the society for everybody. That's what's best for everybody. So if you believe that, it makes sense for the experts in government to be running everything. So with that framework, to get the liberals, when they present their agenda, to get them to defend and explain, and 99, or if not 100%, will not be able to do it because it's so severely flawed and it goes against our Constitution, our founding principles.
Yes, that most certainly true. I've got Taking Back America, one of the pages, chapter 13, up here on the screen right now. And you refer to Robert Bork, and Robert Bork pointed out two things that we can do to fight modern liberals in everyday life. Number one, be aware, and number two, resist them in every area of our culture. And yes, you also refer to the movie Network, Howard Beale, which is a movie that in my late middle-aged years I have come to appreciate more than I ever thought possible. I can watch Howard Beale all night long and never grow tired of it. There's two additional points. Always focus on fundamental principles, and always stay on the offensive. Now, it seems to me that staying on the offensive and resisting the liberals in our culture go hand in hand. And how can we stay on the offensive while resisting the liberal mindset that exists in our government and our neighbors without being portrayed as the bad guy. How can we go about not being portrayed as the bad guy?
It is tough, but one thing is to think the process through before we attack the liberals. For instance, they will talk about the poverty issue, that we need to be compassionate and increase the welfare state. And if we have some information about everything from the amount of venereal disease, pregnancies, crime, they increased when the welfare state was expanding. Our education was increased when the liberal programs came into the school, especially self-concept, self-esteem, and the open classroom and those sorts of things. So when the liberals start with their programs, we need to reverse it on them, on how they are. That's why I say go on the attack all the time, how they are wrong and how they have made things worse. And I think the general public, that's why talk radio is very popular, because I think it's a voice for a lot of people. We know instinctively that it's wrong. I can remember hearing some professors when I really didn't have much information and thinking, this is wrong. Something is wrong here. I can't quite put my finger on it. But that's not how nature and human beings in society work. It goes against it. And we need to think those things through. Why is it that, listen to our instincts, really listen. And we'll come up with the reasons why it is wrong. Parenting, for instance, we should be in control of what we teach our children. And the liberals want more and more. Look what happened to Jindal in Louisiana. He wanted some vouchers for some schools. Parents approved of it. The people loved him for it. And the federal government is going there and trying to stop him. And with these vapid claims of racism and desegregation that are totally absurd and have proven to be false.
Yes, that's another thing that sticks in my craw is the Justice Department right now. It's like a criminal organization, like the mafia.
Eric Holder, I was surprised to find out, did some checking on the internet, that he was quite the radical that was playing with Marxism and violence and occupied a building. I think it was Cornell. I think he studied at Cornell, where he studied. And he was one of the revolutionaries of the 1960s.
Yes, it's the sort of people that Barack Obama has surrounded himself with to run this government, is the radicals, the leftists, the Marxists, the communists from the 1960s. That's who's... our parents are right. They were wrong in the 1960s, and they're sure as heck wrong now, aren't they?
Yes, and he's even has younger ones like Van Jones, who said he was a communist. And I checked the net, and I found that he contributed a chapter to a book. I can send you the link, where the book was dedicated to the worldwide overthrow of capitalism and setting up international socialism. And he put a chapter in that book, and that was one of the appointees by Barack Obama. I don't understand why it didn't make more news than it did.
That's the media. Myself and the people that I listen to were all over that when it happened. But the general media, the lamestream media, as we like to call them, just didn't say anything about it. In your book, you have one paragraph that we could probably finish up the show on this. You said, "At heart, modern liberals have no reverence or respect for our founding principles. For modern liberals, people of today are superior to our founders simply because they believe humans have progressed beyond them over the past 2 centuries. But this is where modern liberals catch themselves in their own trap. By asserting this, they are implying that there are no enduring principles. It would mean that morality, justice, and even truth are not possible, but they are things that simply change with the times."
Yes.
How can we stop that mindset? Because that I think, more than anything else that we've talked about tonight, describes them to a T. When they start spouting off all this type of viewpoint, What can you say to them just to shut them down? Is there anything?
Oh, yes. That means if to play the role that, let's say, you were the liberal who spouted that, I would ask you, that means that you believe that there are no permanent truths, there's no permanent morality, and that it can change at any time, and the government can create any rights it wants and put you in a position in which you will have to say, if you're going to stick with that position, that we should trash our Constitution, we should throw it away. And they can't say it, but they can't go on and defend what they are saying unless they mean to end our Constitution, because that is its basis. And if you can't support that, that means you can't support the Constitution. So you want a new form of government. Is that what you're telling me?
And if they say
and
yes,
every time I've said that to a liberal, I haven't gotten an answer yet, except, oh, I must be some kind of radical or reactionary, or listening to whoever, Glenn Beck or somebody, told you to say that. That kind of response. That's all I get.
is that a constructive way to approach them, do you think? Besides
well,
that,
I hate to sound too pessimistic, but if a person is a diehard liberal, I actually have no hope.
It's a lost cause.
The reason I will debate them is to increase my own knowledge and awareness of what they are, and to practice some ways to find the flaws and weaknesses and their illogic. But it's the ground in the middle, that 40% undecided, don't care, I'm a moderate, they're unsure. Those are the people we need to be talking to and convincing, and it depends on what's important. If a person has young children, talk to them about education and their child's future. Maybe they have a relative, a son in the military, talk to them about important or national defenses and things like this. So as far as change goes, those are the people that we need to be in contact with. And I've given up on the more diehard liberals. I don't think it's worth the energy to try to change them. They're not going to change.
Yes,
they could be driven further, deeper into their liberalism.
Yes, you're trying to the untrained person trying to get somebody that's insane to become sane just drives them further into the insanity. I have a friend that I used to work with. He's a former friend on Facebook, and I said something on there once, and he jumped on me with his liberal mindset. And I sent him a list of questions, and within a half an hour, he had unfriended me.
Oh.
He didn't answer any of the questions. He just unfriended me.
I do something the listeners may enjoy. I just got it yesterday, or the day before yesterday. I went online to the Postal Service and ordered Ronald Reagan stamps. So when I send out my Christmas card, I'm sure when I send it to liberals, I put a Ronald Reagan stamp on the Christmas cards. We can have fun with these people too.
That's the best part about it, is tweaking them. But you got to be careful they don't actually get elected to some office where they can do you personal harm.
Yeah.
you got to be careful about that. You don't want them coming back to bite you. Okay, to finish up the show, which book do you think people should read? And they're listed in your book. Where actually, let me start this way. Where can people get your book? What is the title of it exactly? And what's the best place to pick up your book?
Amazon.com, and the title is The Modern Liberal Jungle, a guide for Americans, but the first part it would suffice. And I have a website that provides links, and it includes my personal email, and the link is www.liberaljungle.com. Not modern, but www.liberaljungle.com.
Oh, okay. Excellent. Well, of course, when I get this up on all of this up on the website, there will be a big honking link to your website. You have 2 books in there. First, of course, is the Constitution, but there's two of them. One by Matthew Spaulding, We Still Hold These Truths, Rediscovering Our Principles, Reclaiming Our Future, and Edwin Meese's massive 500-page book, The Heritage Guide to the Constitution. Which one do you think would be better for the average conservative to read to help equip them against liberals?
The first one.
Why?
Because and the one right after that, what would our founders do? Because it's concise, it's very readable. The person is an expert, but presents everything. Matthew Spaulding presents everything in very readable terms, and is just supportive of the basic principles that he articulates really well. The basic principles of our Constitution and our founding, and it leads to more in-depth. And I think if somebody digested that book really well, they could give almost any liberal a really good run for his money.
Yes, that's one of the things that I enjoy to do. Sadly, I don't get to do it often enough because most of the time I'm surrounded by people that are the same mindset as I am, which I find is the vast majority of people that I come in contact with.
Yes.
It's uncanny. Everybody has the same opinion. Even people that I think, I probably shouldn't say that to this person, they wind up saying it to me, which is...
Oh, that's... I wish I remembered earlier. That is the other thing that is very, very important, is that exactly that, what you said. I think a lot of people they hesitate. I don't want to sound politically incorrect or rude or anything like that. And they hear someone like you say something, and they say, it's okay, I can give my opinion. And I think that's one of the reasons talk radio became so popular, is finally someone is out there not adhering to this political correctness and trying to appease everybody. So speak out like that, and it emboldens the other people who hesitate and are rather afraid of being labeled and insulted and being called ignorant and uneducated.
Last question for the show. I live fairly close to a very liberal town, which is Ann Arbor, Michigan. We like to call it the socialist empire of Ann Arbor. You see bumper stickers on their cars, Obama 08, and they're coexist bumper stickers and things. And I have the distinct feeling that if I were to put a conservative type bumper sticker on my car and go into Ann Arbor, I could expect a couple of broken windows in my truck. Do you think it's true?
I think so. Harry Stein has a funny book about living in such a place, and he had his car scratched. He has some interesting stories. What's his? Oh my God! I can't believe I'm sitting next to a Republican. Is the title?
Oh, it's very disheartening because that they'll turn to violence very easily. But I'm not going to do that. If I see one of their bumper stickers on their cars, it's like, so what? You're an idiot. But they seem to have to take action. Is that part of the liberal mindset?
It's like a blind rage that you're one of the evil ones. You're put in the category of a fascist. You're supporting fascism, so you deserve what you get.
90 seconds.
Yeah, you just it just terrible. I don't know if you heard that or not. That was Blog Talk instructing me that I have 90 seconds left in the show.
Yes,
which is very convenient. So I want to thank you for coming on the show. I'm sorry I jumped around so much on the subject matter. Probably drove you nuts the way I was doing all of that, but it's...
Oh, no, I thoroughly enjoyed this time, and thank you very much for having me.
It was...
60 seconds.
It was the pleasure is all mine. I'm just thrilled to be able to talk to somebody that's so articulate, such an articulate conservative as you are. I'm so blessed to be able to get you and people like you on this show. I am just... It's just amazing, the breadth of knowledge that's out there. So I really appreciate you coming on the show. And I would wish that you stay safe against the radiation in Japan.
Oh, I'm far from it. Thank you very much for your concern and your time and getting in touch with me.
Yes. And, of course, you're always welcome to come back on the show when you write your next book or you have additional thoughts or anything like that. And I will send you a link to the MP3 when it's ready to go, as well as the link for the
10 seconds.
The link for all of the information that we talked about on the show, as well as all the notes that I've been scribbling out as we've been talking.
Thank you very much.
Not a problem. And once again, I appreciate you coming on the show. And with that, I'm going to let you go. I appreciate you coming on, sir.
Take care.
Okay.
Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving to you, too. Goodbye.
All right.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, was our guest, Mr. Jim Connelly, and his book, which is entitled, I always forget the name of his book because it's so long. It's entitled The Modern Liberal Jungle, A Guide for Americans. It is a very good book. I enjoyed my conversation with him immensely. And my name is Bill Zam, and I appreciate all of you tuning in and listening to the show and watching this on YouTube and wherever else you might see the show. I appreciate it, and be sure to send your friends to all of our sites and everything so we can all become more educated. My name is Bill Zam. Thank you for listening, and this is the Freedom Talk Radio Network and Celine Entertainment Television Group.